Dollar Archangel.
This is going to be so weird having to be professional with you.
You don't have to be. You can not be professional. I just have to think about what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I've still got to have a certain...
Yeah, but I know, like, you're not worried about swearing and all of that.
Oh, yeah, no, so fucking do it.
Yeah.
In fact, I actively encourage it. Hashtag Performing Arts with John Ellis Benton. And in this week's episode,
Rebecca Keeves.
Alright, so why acting? I mean, because obviously you're from a legal background. Why? It seems a million miles away.
Actually, they're very similar. I would say acting gives lawyers a great foundation, especially advocacy, which I do, because in reality, when we're in the courtroom, we're playing a role. And you have to be able to still do the very best job you can. So there are cross-applicable skills. But you say I'm from a lawyering background. I've acted a lot longer than I've lawyered.
Oh, well, that's answered my next question. So I take it it's obviously helpful to draw on a confidence from being on stage and in front of people to use in the courtroom. Do you see a difference between yourself and people who obviously don't do that in their spare time? Where do they get their confidence from, do you reckon?
I think you manage to adapt more to the different situations. I think it's easier to do that. One of the main things we have to do and try and teach our baby barristers, as we call them, is how to think on your feet, which is obviously akin to improvising. So I think those things come potentially easier to me than people who've done non-acting or not done acting rather than done non-acting, because that's terrible.
Yeah. I mean, I saw an old lady walking down the street earlier. She was definitely doing some non-acting.
I see people non-acting all the time.
There's some weird kind of scumbags out there. And obviously this is a podcast about performing arts.
Yeah.
And most people I talk to are trying to get into it professionally, which is not something on your to-do list, really, is it? Because obviously your aim is, again, on the legal side rather than...
Yeah, absolutely. It's not something on my to-do list. It was something I considered when I was thinking about my future, when I was a teenager, a youngster. So
I'm surprised you can remember that far back.
Well, I mean, it's all in black and white, to be frank, but it's, it certainly was a consideration. I loved it, and it was a huge part of my childhood and my teenage years. So when I was thinking about it, it was a potential option. And I remember someone at drama who did the costumes largely, and I started saying about going, I wanted to look into going to university and I wanted to be a barrister. And she was like, why? You're going to just waste all that talent. Her words, not mine. And I said, well, some people would say that I'd be wasting my academic ability if I didn't. And she went, oh, are you clever then? And I thought that was really interesting because she'd only ever known me in that theatre setting.
Yeah. If you don't know you personally and you saw you on stage, obviously you've got no need to show intelligence when you're an actor or singer. No offence to anyone, but...
That's why you love it so much.
Exactly, yeah. It's pretty mindless. But since I've got you on here, I have got a legal thing to ask you, and I've been dying to ask you this all week. So if a plane crashes on the border between England and Scotland, where would you say we have to bury the survivors?
I don't do probate law, I'm afraid.
I love how that's what you took and not burying the living survivors.
Oh, I see. Of course. Well, people do odd things.
The Scots would probably bury the English alive anyway.
Yes, yes. The Scots would bury the English alive anyway. So it's
Yeah, of course. You actually got into acting through dance, which
Yes.
seems quite a common thing. Actually, having done this, what was the dance group?
I was part of the Susan Lucas School of Dance, which is now the Alice Lucas School of Dance,
Okay.
as it's been passed on to her daughter. And there were close ties between that dance school and the local amateur dramatics group. So when it came to panto season, they would collaborate essentially, and the dance school would do some dances in the panto, and then as we got older, we essentially became the chorus, and they would ask who would want a few lines, and then I was like, me, I want lines, I want to do things, I volunteer for everything, that doesn't get me bullied at all. And then they would audition for other roles, and the youth group developed, and we took a play to festival and things like that, and it just sort of went on from there. And I did that in my local group until I went to university.
Okay, so confidence was never an issue for you when you were a kid.
It's interesting. Personal confidence in myself, I've always struggled with.
Right.
But I am more than happy to go on stage and pretend to be someone else. In fact, one might say those two things are tied in.
Yeah, I mean, it might sound weird saying that, but that's not an uncommon thing. I mean, if you were sat with a therapist would probably say, "Oh, well, you're probably trying to hide from your true identity by some kind of bullshit like that."
Yeah, absolutely. It's a form of escapism.
Yeah, it just gets you out of everyday life, and the fact that everyone around you's got a passion for it as well is something that you don't get in many other, I don't know, sectors of life, I suppose you'd say.
Yeah, and I think sort of topic looping that back, I think that's another element that helps with being a lawyer, because I'm not only surrounded by one type of person. We tend to surround ourselves with people who are like ourselves, and that just isn't the case when you do drama, because you get people from all walks of life, all different personalities, people you wouldn't usually socialize with, some people you might instinctively avoid, but you are in this situation with them and you learn a lot about people.
Yeah, and it gives you a lot of trust in people as well. One of the things they'll do in education for performing arts is you would have to do a shit ton of trust exercises, which always end up being sort of like you physically trust them, fall back in someone's arms, which, to be honest, is completely useless, because most of the time you're counting on people not to just leave you looking like a dick on stage. So you build up a massive circle of trust with everyone. So you say your first proper lead was Ernie's Incredible Hallucinations.
Yes.
So was that a big thing for you?
Yeah, so that was a youth production. Ernie was obviously supposed to be a boy, but being a small village amateur dramatics youth group, there weren't that many boys. So we changed it to Erica's Incredible Hallucinations, but the play is Ernie's. And it's, I don't know if you're familiar with it at all, but it's a child who has some sort of combination of hallucinations and illusions. And the other characters form these. It's like she lives in her own little world. And I dressed all crazy, and I think I had my hair in like 800 plaits or something. And you talk to the audience, and that was really intimidating. You actually started by sitting on the steps down from the stage into the auditorium. So I was under the bar lights, and I'd never been on stage in a situation where you could see the faces of the audience.
Right.
But we opened with me sitting on those steps, giving a monologue directly to the audience, and that was quite a leap for me, but I loved it. It was brilliant.
How old were you at this point, did you say?
I'd have been 13. I'm relatively sure about that. I don't know if I should tell this story.
Go for it. If it's that bad, it'll go. If it's that bad, it'll probably stay as well.
Because I'd recently been on a holiday to Future Insurer and met a boy, and no one's ever really ever heard of the place that I come from. And he asked where I came from, and I said, and he's like, "Oh, I know there. My dad coaches football or cricket or something, and we play against them. So we come to your village." And I was like, "Oh, so it's supposed to just be a holiday fling. This is really awkward." And and so we sort of kept in contact. I told him about the play, and he turned up at the play. And I'd been outside with my friend, and I saw him arrive. I was like, oh my goodness, that's Ben. So I said to her, like, just lie, whatever. And I ran in. And so she said to him, like, "Oh, Rebecca just, she has this thing. She can't see anyone before she performs."
So not to make you sound like a complete douche at all.
No, exactly. And then she came backstage and with a bunch of flowers and a box of Gillians. So obviously all of the adult members completely ripped it out of me, quite rightly, and I'd have done the same thing. But then when the curtain went up and I could see the faces of the audience, he was sitting on a table with my mum, my nan, and very bizarrely, I'm pretty sure my dad. Now, my mum and dad were divorced and had been for like 8 years. And I had to do this monologue. So I remember it quite clearly.
I feel like I'm more interested in finding out where it went with this boy than finding out about your acting career. Because how did you shake this incredibly cute, gentle stalker?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to say. I exchanged letters and made it clear that I had moved on.
With the letters FUCKYOU?
No, they weren't. I was very gentle. I got a completely heartbroken letter back, and it's really sad, and I still have it. But I felt really bad. But also, it's supposed to be a holiday romance, so
it's not exactly Danny and Sandy. It's more sort of Ralph Wiggum and Lisa Simpson.
It was a bit like that. If he's listening, you were a very nice boy, but he was a couple of years older than me, and we just were in different places. It was different points in our lives.
Yeah. So how long were you with this group? What was this group called? I think you did say it, but I'm terrible.
It was just the local, so it was just players.
So you had a few lead roles with this local company. Principal Girl in Dick Whittington being one.
That was my first. That was about the same time actually, and that was my first kind of mixed adult lead role thing where I was acting with the adults, because I was the only junior to have a principal role. And again, I think I was about 13, 14. It might have been the end of that year because my birthday's in the January. And yeah, that was the first proper thing. And I got to stay up late and stay, to the adult rehearsals. It was all very exciting. My mum let me have a mobile phone in case I needed it on the 2-minute walk home.
Were they around?
Just, actually.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
No, but it's pretty accurate. It wasn't a common thing to have. So yeah, I was Principal Girl in Dick Whittington. I was Principal Girl and Principal Boy quite a few times, being that sort of age, not sounding like a strangled cat when I sang. I'm not saying it was any good, but it was good enough kind of thing. Having a little bit of rhythm and being able to dance helped. I have to say though, was it Dick Whittington? One of them, it must have been Aladdin, I think. And my dance, because I was a bit older, and I was Aladdin. And my dance troupe was doing like a harem dance. And I'd learnt it because we learnt it in class. And it was actually quite sad standing in the wings watching it. I did discuss with the director whether I had enough time to get changed, do the harem dance, and then get back into my Aladdin gear. But apparently that wasn't going to be appropriate.
So at this point, and maybe even still now, dancing is more your first love, would you say?
That's hard. I think it fulfills different roles in my life. In a very similar way. It's still a escapism type thing. I'm not very good at dancing. I think I'm okay at acting.
To be honest, I don't think I've ever seen you dance when I'm sober. That's not a comment on you. It could have been worse. I could have said, I've never seen you dance sober.
yeah, quite. No, you have to get drunk to watch me dance, is what you're saying.
No. No, it's like normally if there's a dance show on, or if there's any show on, I'll just drink beforehand because that's just what I do.
Yeah, whether you're in the show or not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine. I can move. You know, I can. I know what things mean. I know what words mean. Being the primary dance I learnt was ballet.
Yeah.
So the primary style of dance. So we did ballet and jazz, but really the focus was on ballet. So I learnt the kind of the technical and the very precise, which of course goes in line with my personality. I like rules. I like to know that that's what we're doing. Most kids like the free movement element of ballet because it's a little bit more relaxed. And I'm like, but what angle is my hand supposed to be at? And I wanted those rules and that structure.
Yeah.
So dance was definitely my first love because I hadn't experienced acting. I find it, I think, more relaxing to do dance. I think there's a stressful element of acting that isn't applicable to dancing.
Right.
But I love acting. I love getting on the stage and doing that.
Yeah.
I think that is my greater love, is acting.
That's fair enough. So it had to stop when you went to uni, though. There was nothing around at the time.
So I went to Coventry University for my first degree, and they didn't have a drama group. So I went to the Freshers' Fair, had a look at all the stalls. I'd actually gone to university with my partner at the time, and we were looking around, and we just couldn't believe that there wasn't a drama club. Me being me, I was like, oh, maybe I'll set one up. But
there's nothing wrong with that.
No, but I didn't, because hand in hand with wanting to organise and participate in everything, I have a crippling social anxiety. So I was like, well, I could set one up, but maybe just monologues.
Right, I see. Yeah.
And I'm actually quite pleased that there wasn't, because it made me branch out, and I joined a jiu-jitsu club. I joined jiu-jitsu and fencing. Fencing was dull.
You don't like fencing?
No.
But all the Darth Vader quotes.
I know, and I think the thing is, I wanted to stab people, and what they had us doing was just shuffling around for like the first 2 sessions.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I was like, no, we're stabbing though.
Yeah.
And I think had there been a drama club, I'd have just thrown myself entirely into that and completely missed out on the experience and the lifelong friends that I've gained from doing jiu-jitsu, and being able to, fall without hurting myself, which is really handy because I'm super clumsy.
Yeah, well, it's also handy on stage.
It is.
So, but was that I suppose that would be the sort of closest substitute you could get, because you said dancing was kind of an escape, it was relaxing. Was jiu-jitsu the same thing, because it was all bodily movement?
Jiu-jitsu was the same sort of thing for quite different reasons, actually, because when you walk into the dojo, the room that you're training in, you have to rei, the bow that you do, and you do the same when you leave, and your phone is off, and you leave everything at the door. That's the point. When you are in there to train and to focus. And I fully embrace this. So at the end of, I think it was the end of the first term, but we all got hoodies, and you'd have your nickname on your hoodie. And obviously you're not allowed to pick your own nickname. That's madness. So I was Vicious.
It's like you're the Lost Spice Girl.
Well, a lot of people got their nicknames through the socializing or silly things they did when they were drunk.
Right.
I didn't drink, and crippling social anxiety.
Vicious. I think that might stick, if you don't mind. I might keep that one.
Okay.
So, what year was uni?
So I went to Coventry in 2005.
Oh, okay. Right. So, in all the time at Coventry, you just had to put performing on the back burner. It just wasn't happening at that time.
Well, sort of. I couldn't do it as a regular thing, but my old drama group back home let me still be in their pantos. So as long as I could make it to the dress rehearsal, they let me be in the show. which seems a bit mad.
Yeah, what level of responsibility did you have within the show? Were you still playing the lead characters?
Yeah, I mean, I was Jack in Jack and the Beanstalk. No, so what they did was allocate to me a role that I could largely do and kind of just roll with, because they knew I could do that.
Right.
So I was, and I know you'll say there wasn't one, but I was the dog in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And there is a dog, not in maybe the original version, but in our version, there's a dog, and
Okay.
it lives with the woodcutters, because we didn't have any dwarves. So it lived with the 7 woodcutters.
You could have put out casting calls.
So I played this dog, and I was actually talking to the director and author of that particular Panto the other day about it, because I was just kind of, while everyone else was doing their acting, I was just doing whatever I wanted. So there was a fake fireplace with a basket full of logs in it. I took the logs out and got in it like it was a dog basket and curled up in it. And while Snow White, the witch knocks on the door and she's like, no, I can't open the door, but come to the window. So while she was talking to her at the window, I peed up the door.
So you were just upstaging Snow White at every opportunity.
Yeah, so I could just do whatever I want. And there was only one real kind of proper thing I had to do, but the woman who was playing Snow White, I had known for years. So we'd acted together before, and we knew each other. And once she put the comb in her hair and passed out, I did this whole like almost cartoon style, like, hey, running around, like panicking. And then the woodcutters came back, and I had to mime out the whole scene as a dog. And I still think that was one of my greatest performances.
Do you have it on video? On video? Do you have a copy of it?
I haven't seen one, but there may be one. I certainly have photos.
Okay.
But I know how convincing I was as a dog, because the woodcutters were all lined up on chairs, and I went and sat at the end of the chairs, sort of like a dog, obviously, because I was in character. And the woodcutter on the end, who was new to the group and had only really knew me as part of this play, had been kind of stroking my head and patting me like you would a dog while they were doing their lines. But I got like really into it, and I was kind of, lifting up my head so he could scratch my chin. And then I laid on my back, and he started rubbing my belly. But I'm not a dog, I'm a woman. And he freaked out, and he just started, it was in the rehearsal, thank goodness, but he sort of stopped, froze, lifted his hand up, and went, Rebecca's in there.
Well, he didn't realise it.
Well, he didn't kind of think about it, because I was so convincing as a dog. So he was delivering his lines, so he was concentrating on that, and then just sort of petting me.
Yeah.
And then realised that he probably shouldn't be doing that.
It's a mid-sentence, he got a handful of tit, basically.
I will neither confirm nor deny.
So, obviously, after uni, you came across the Witchy Players in Coventry.
Yeah, so it was much later, actually. So I did my undergraduate from 2005 to 2008. And then I did a graduate diploma in law at the College of Law in Birmingham, which is now the University of Law. And the year after that, I did my bar vocational course, which is the training to become a barrister. And during that time, I was at uni 9 till between 3 and 4, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. We had Wednesdays off, and obviously the weekends. But my personal situation had changed quite a lot, and I needed to work. But the courses weren't offered part-time. So I had to carry on with a full-time course, and then I was doing full-time hours at Coventry Building Society call centre.
Right, okay. So quite a busy life.
Yeah, so looking back, I'm not really sure how I did it, to be honest. But I'd leave for uni about 7, and then when I'd finished, kind of, it varied a little bit, but it's about 3:30, depending on the workshops and stuff. I would then drive back and try and start at the call centre between 4 and 4:30. And then I'd work there until 8, get home about 8:30, have dinner, study, and pass out usually at my desk and wake up at like 4 in the morning or whatever. And then on Wednesdays, Saturdays and Sundays, I would do the whole day in the call centre.
Right, okay. So what part of this massively busy life, which takes up like 18 hours of your day, did you think, I need to join another acting group because I don't feel busy enough?
So it was actually after I finished the bar course.
Okay.
So I finished the bar course in the June-July period of 2010, and in the August I managed to get a job, my first law job. So I mistakenly thought that meant I would have more time. That was mad. But so I stopped working at the call centre, and I have to say they were an amazing employer, and went self-employed in this law job. And then I thought, well, this is the time. I can now find a local Amdram group and get back into it. And I was desperate to get back into it. So I basically Googled it and found the Wheatsheaf Players. So when I emailed, I think I was emailing with Heather at the time, who was the artistic director. And she said to come along one Wednesday, because I did Wheatsheaf Wednesdays, where it would be not a rehearsal, but we'd be doing like set building and stuff. You were there.
Yeah.
And I turned up, and Chris, who was the chairman, greeted me, but they were in a play. And being, crippling social anxiety, I didn't turn up at 7:30 because I didn't want to be the first person there. I turned up at like 7:50 because they were kind of, oh, come whenever. So Chris was very friendly and made me feel very welcome. But he was like, oh, just go in and watch, it's fine. I'm like, but I'm going into the auditorium in the middle of the play. and sitting by myself. But it was lovely, and everyone spoke to me afterwards, and I felt very at home very quickly.
Yeah. So what was your first production with the Wheatsheaf?
I think I had sort of a minor role they did a variety show at Christmas. I think I was involved in that, but my first proper one was their pantomime, which would be in the beginning of 2011. And it was the Beauty Sleeping, and I played Sleeping Beauty. I think largely because Chrissy, who usually does those roles, was not available, and I was a girl of the right age, and it was kind of, I think we just sort of lucked out that I wasn't terrible.
So you seem to be putting your talents down a lot, but you had this person.
Hi, I'm Rebecca.
But you had this person, like, how long ago before? Was it 8 years before, that was like, why are you going to law school and wasting your talents? So there's no need to keep putting yourself down.
No. Yeah, that is a problem that I have generally. Thanks for bringing that up.
You are most welcome, and I don't feel guilty in the slightest. But I mean, it's important to point out as well that this was, as you say, 2011, which is 10 years ago now, and you've been with them throughout. So yeah, well, so obviously throughout the years, there's a list before the company had to move out of the theatre. Was that 2017? But obviously it was the perfect little theatre company, because it had everyone involved loved it. Had its own auditorium, its own bar, its own stage, its own backstage.
Yeah.
So what was going on there at the time? How did it all develop?
We did all sorts. I think part of my problem with remembering the things at the Wheatsheaf is that we did plays constantly, and I actually think there was a disadvantage to having our own theatre, because we could rehearse every day, and some people wanted to rehearse every day, and other people had other things that they did, other hobbies, or we had some people with young families, and it could be difficult to try and do that. Whereas if you don't have your own space, then the days you rehearse on the days you have that space for. And so it feels like a continuous memory for me. And I can't put anything in any particular order, which is very unusual for me. I'm good at that sort of thing. But I know, obviously, we did panto every year. They tended to be a bit non-traditional in the way that we did them. And there was a period of time that they were written by members of the group. We did some farces. I remember it was one of the Farndale Avenue plays, and there's a series, and I'd actually done some of them with my original drama group. Well, when I say I'd done them, when I was in the youth group of the original drama group, I would do the teas and coffees at the adult plays with my friend Gillian. So we'd go to every rehearsal and stuff, and I'd prompt some of them. So I wasn't in it, but I was familiar with the series. And so we did this, and it's all very silly. It's very farcical. And I was the alien. You are basically playing an amateur dramatics group putting on a play, and they're terrible. So I mean, I had to
just to
play
clarify,
someone.
you mean the group in the play, not the group that you were with. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's terrible, and all these things go wrong. There's a lot of physical comedy in it. And I had to get my head stuck in a drawer as an alien, and someone was trying to pull my head out of the drawer, but it looked a bit dodgy because of the way it was being done. All of that was fine until I realised that one of the members of the players and who was in the play was extremely good friends of the local judge. So I all of a sudden had to do this bizarre scene knowing that a judge that I appeared before as a lawyer was sitting in the audience.
Ah, right. So this was the first real knock of your onstage confidence, I would assume.
I just felt very, very nervous about it. I mean, he was amazing, and obviously it's to play and it's fine and everyone understands that. But it was just a bit like, oh, he's in the audience, is he? I'd have rather not known that. Thanks.
Well, do you get that a lot? Do you find it hard to separate your sort of Amdram hobby from your work life? Because obviously you've got that initial like, oh shit, this judge is in the audience, I'm going to look like a complete tit. But he is also a human being, realises that you're a human being with your own time and your own hobbies. So how often does that sort of initial come over you?
So back then a lot, and I was I can't think what the word would be, but I had a view of what being a member of this profession meant, and I was concerned about the way it would come across if I was in things silly or anything like that. Now, having been a part of this profession for so long, I take a very different view. And actually, I was in our sort of professional magazine called Council, and it was a picture of me in one of the pantomimes, and because I'm a little girl who's having a temper tantrum, basically. And
sorry, are we on about in the panto or in real life?
In the panto. On this occasion, we talk about in the panto. So, although I do feel the part might have been written for me. So, and that's in this magazine, and it's a piece because the bar is trying to remind people that it is okay to be human, and that we need to look after our own well-being.
Yeah.
I was asked to do an article about my hobbies, about amateur dramatics, and I included dancing in there as well, as things that I do because our job's very hard. It's very stressful. It's very, very emotional. You have people's lives in your hands. Whatever area of law you practice, you are affecting people's lives every day. You can't have a bad day because you affect someone's life so dramatically, and that's very stressful. So it was part of a well-being project to try and convince barristers to do other things and to relax. So now I think they integrate really well, and I'm perfectly happy to tell people about it and to laugh about the roles and tell people, the dog story and all of that. Whereas I think straight-laced was the word I was looking for. I think previously, when I was younger, I was a bit more straight-laced about it.
Yeah, it must be difficult. Like you say, it's easier now, but going into it must be difficult because, like you say, you are so straight-laced every day. I mean, how someone can do that all day and then suddenly come along, play a dog, getting your tits rubbed on stage. I assume it's got to be difficult, but it is good that they're actively encouraging it to be different for
Absolutely.
You people.
Yeah, you people,
You
you
people.
species. And it also, it's important to embrace different parts of your personality. You know, I am that formal, really like the tradition. I mean, don't get me wrong, when I've got my my wig and gown on, or so especially the gown, I do pretend that I'm a professor from Hogwarts. And like, are you even really human if you don't? I mean, there was once when I was appearing in the High Court District Registry in Birmingham, and I was the only person on that floor that was wearing a wig and gown that day, and I had to walk down the breadth, and it bellowed out, and I was like, I'm Snape, and this is so cool.
My problem is because you're so small, I'm imagining Flitwick.
Oh my goodness. Oh, now that's what I'm gonna feel like. Oh, thanks for that.
That's all right, mate.
But I mean, but yeah, seriously. So the job's very serious, and that very much complements part of my personality. But also, I'm a bit weird. I'm a bit weird, and I get quite hyperactive, and I really enjoy letting off energy in that way. And you get during the day of especially if you're doing an all-day trial, you get a lot of nervous energy, and you have to stay calm. I always say to our students, you've got to be a duck. You've got to be completely calm on the surface, no matter how fast your feet are pedaling underneath. So actually, it's really good to then go to an activity and let out that energy.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it is. And I mean, it didn't just stay with the Wheat Sheaf, did it? Because obviously you're still with them, but obviously we sort of made our own group, which is effectively our social group. Like, it's all of us best friends, and we just came together and decided to do a show with a Cloud 8 company.
Yeah, I think you're probably giving me a little bit too much credit in that. I mean, you formed a company, and I agreed to do some shows with it.
I literally formed a company with the view of doing one show because I really wanted to do a show, but everyone else made it. I gave myself like 2 songs, and I was just like, look at all my talented friends.
I mean, I watched that show because it's on YouTube, and I obviously you know that, but other people don't. And I watched it with my.
Yeah, hear the people sing on Cloud 8's YouTube channel, just in case anyone's wondering.
Subscribe, follow, and share. And I watched that because I got myself a lockdown boyfriend. So I should just clarify, because he'll probably listen, that I intend for him to be my boyfriend after lockdown.
Yeah. And also clarify that this is being recorded during lockdown 3 now. It's not like he's gone Beauty and the Beast on your ass and just locked you in a castle.
That is also true. That was important. Thank you.
Yeah, that's all right.
Although if I could have had that library, you know.
Oh yeah, that's a fair point.
And also locked away, socially crippling anxiety.
Hey!
So yes, so we watched it the other day, and it is. I mean, that is genuinely one of the best shows I've done. It was so good, and I met some new people, got a lot closer to some people that I had known before but hadn't had that much to do with, or hadn't known for that long. It was a really, really enjoyable show to do, and I know people who came on night 1 and then came twice more during the run.
Yeah,
because it was so good.
Yeah,
we were amazing. Basically, we were all amazing.
Obviously, and still are, nearly 10 years later. But unfortunately, the Wheat Sheaf lost its home, the theatre in Wykin. But you're part of the group that's keeping it going. Well, at the time, you kept it going with everyone. You moved to new locations. And they're sort of going into a more classical, darker phase.
With their plays, or each?
With the plays. Definitely with the plays. I mean, with the gothic horrors. I think one thing I'd like to talk about is you were in Dracula.
I was.
And you played Lucy Westenra.
If you say so. So this is...
This is going to be a great conversation.
Well, this is a thing. I was always on stage, almost always, with Julia, who you interviewed before, and I didn't know which one of us was which.
She was
She was
Mina.
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 And, and I just like I knew the important things about my character, but I did struggle with what my name was. And I actually went on Coventry and Warwickshire Radio to promote it, and they were like, "What part are you playing?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm Mina." And the person, I can't remember who it was. I think it was probably Dan was with me, and he was just like shaking his head at me. And I was like, I'm Lucy. Am I Lucy?
Well, it's interesting the fact that you don't remember that, because arguably, even though Mina's character is the leading lady of the piece, Lucy is the sort of iconic character. I mean, God knows how many times Dracula's been done over the years. It's a stupid amount of times. But Lucy is always the character on the posters. I don't know how to describe it. She's essentially the first victim.
She's the more interesting character, I think.
Yeah, she's the main victim. She's the first victim. I mean, look at the poster of Jaws. It's always that woman swimming and the shark coming up because she's the first one.
Yeah.
So Lucy is the first shark lady. So how
And I preferred that. I preferred having that role to the other one.
You are so good at Dracula.
I'm just really bad at names. Who are you? Like, I'm so bad at names.
But how did you read the book before you did the play?
Did I?
Or rather, I suppose a better question would be, how much research, if any, did you do beforehand, or did you just stick to the script?
No, I didn't. I knew the story anyway.
Yeah.
I may have read it when I was younger, but Dean adapts these things for us, and I didn't want to watch anything or get anyone else's perspective on it. I wanted to read Dean's adaptation, see how I felt about that, see how he felt about it, and be true to what he wanted.
Yeah.
Rather than try and or inadvertently act it someone else's way.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough, because I'm just interested to know, because similar to, I spoke to Julia, and she played Dr. something in Clockwork Orange.
Yes.
And when, I don't think I've ever done it, but when you play a role that's been done so much, especially when it's an iconic role such as Lucy, I'm just interested to know how you put your own sort of twang on it, I guess.
Yeah, I did more research, which we may come on to, but when we did Hyde.
Right.
But with Dracula, I just largely just wanted to play it the way Dean wanted. And the thing is, when she's pre-bite, if I put it that way, she's very much, your period drama woman. It's not that different to the role I played in Frankenstein when I was Elizabeth. It's a very similar. She was a bit more rebellious.
Yeah, she's outgoing.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a similar role, and you're still within the societal constraints of that time.
Yeah.
And then post bite, she gets all like funky. And
I think the correct term to use is cock tease. She's got these three blokes.
I think that's a fair enough term, yeah.
She's got these three blokes chasing after her. But I think the thing is, like, for example, it may be because they're products of the time, but the older ones, such as Christopher Lee, those characters could have been sort of damsel in distress.
Yeah.
You've got the 1992 Ford Coppola version where it's just outright porn.
Yeah.
She's actually shagging a wolf on a bench in the Thunder and Lightning.
I didn't do that.
No. So that's what I mean. So many people put their own stamp on it.
I think the important thing for me was the contrast.
Yeah.
And I was largely given free rein on costume and things like that. So when I was Lucy? Yeah, when I was Lucy, I had, I was white dress. I had my hair in plaits twisted around themselves. Very, I would say, subtle makeup. Stage makeup's never subtle for stage makeup. And then when I was changing, I had a full length lace black skirt, a black corset, a black and silver shawl, and I've got quite long hair, and I would undo the plaits and just have this massive hair and darken all my makeup, and it was really fun to do the transition and play, and it was good because then when that first scene when I'm back and they're like, is it Lucy? It was that kind of transformation, and then that helps the audience, and it's I really like that kind of visual representation of the change.
So your idea was to go for sort of the flip of the coin, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same person, but the darker side. Yeah.
And it may be that Dean completely disagrees with this, but I think really the bite almost allowed her to free her inner rebellious self.
Yeah, her inner cocktease.
Yeah, it's not that she became a different person, but that it freed her to express herself.
Yeah. And then, of course, you already mentioned there was Hyde, and you did Hyde with a difference, because obviously Dean was adapting these gothic horrors. You have Frankenstein, Dracula, Dr. Jekyll and Hyde. Explain the difference with... If you would. Here's me. Explain!
So I was Hyde. And we played it as a girl, unlike the earlier one where we had to change it. The whole point of Dean's adaptation, and I shan't steal his thunder on this, but was that Hyde would be essentially a smart woman in a man's world.
Yeah, it's still set in the same time period as the book.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And her dad's a doctor, and she wants to be a doctor, but everyone keeps telling her she can't. And so she tries to find a way in which she can become a doctor, and then we end up with the Jekyll and Hyde situation. And Dean was playing... Oh, wait. I was Jekyll. See? I'm terrible!
No, you did say you were Jekyll. No, you didn't. No.
I said I was Hyde. Yeah. I was the non-monster, and Dean was the monster.
Yeah. Remember it this way. Hyde, Hawk.
Yes. Fine. So I was thinking Dr. Jekyll, so that was me. Yeah, so I can't remember what the first name was, unsurprisingly. But I was Jekyll, and then Dean was Hyde, and we had a transformation scene. And we had like the same clothes, but then obviously they looked ridiculous on Dean because he was huge, and then his clothes on me looked ridiculous. We had 2 copies of everything basically.
Yeah, so it added a previously unincluded comedy aspect as well, physical comedy.
There was, yeah. I'm not sure if it was fully intended before we first did it in costume, but Dean in a sort of long spotty skirt and girly blouse and a neck scarf, it was just funny.
Yeah, and it was, especially in current climates where for example Doctor Who, now a leading lady, it was nice to put a classic like that with a leading lady. And to be honest, having read the original, I found it more interesting because there didn't seem much motivation for Jekyll to just want to be a nasty bastard.
No, I agree. I know, as I say, I did do more research with this one because, to be honest, the breadth of my knowledge about Jekyll and Hyde was whatever that kids' TV show was, like Jessica Jekyll, and it may have been before your time. Stop giving me that look. But I did get the audiobook and listen to it while I was driving, and I was like, yeah, no, Dean's version's better than this.
Did you have Richard Armitage? And
I don't remember.
Then why am I putting names to you? What is the point?
Stop giving me names. So it was very good, but it didn't grip me like Dean's version did. But I had a lot of monologues. Because it was done as a letter, so it started at the end of the story, and then the play was me telling the story in this letter, and they were hard. The monologues were hard, and I remember there was one where I was standing on the steps to go because we have the 2-level stage, and Dean was hiding in the tech box which is next to it, and I was doing this monologue, and afterwards he said to me, it was brilliant. I mean, it wasn't what I wrote, but it was fun.
He's such a knobhead.
But it had all the elements in it. I got all the important facts to move us on to the next scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes they were just one into another. I mean, I must have had, I don't know, 7-8 monologues in that that were like a page, and I really liked it. It was really challenging. I really enjoyed that.
And I think now the sort of circle of trust that we were talking about earlier has obviously came onto you in such a way because you're now the chairperson of the Wheat Sheaf.
I am.
You are the boss.
Yeah. Well, we're a team.
Yeah, but you're the boss. You're the boss of the team.
So I've been on the committee quite a few times in various roles, but this is my first time as chair. So we did a couple of months, got through Panto, got through, did a festival play, and we were robbed again, and then lockdown happened.
Yeah. And obviously, and I'm not trying to belittle the situation at all. A lot of people might question, well, if they're not making money from it, if it's not their livelihood, then why even bring it? Or why are we doing this podcast? Because you don't have to depend on the Wheat Sheaf to earn your living. But Amdrams is where it all starts for 90% of people. That's where they find their love for acting. So I think it's just as important to find out, in the current climate now, with bollocks the way it is, what's the plan? Where's the future for the Wheat Sheaf?
Yeah, and if I can just add on to that as well, not only is it important because it's where people find their love of acting in Amdram, it's where people find their love of theatre.
Yeah.
A lot of people find it quite intimidating to go to the theatre. I was raised with theatre. My mum did theatre, my dad did theatre. We just loved it. But not everyone is. And the thought of going to a big proper theatre is really intimidating. We perform now mainly from Radford Social Club, and so it's a much more informal setting, and I think we get people coming who otherwise would have no exposure to theatre at all. So it's important from that point of view as well. And we all know
that's the financial side as well, isn't there?
Absolutely. And it's a massive difference. We try and keep our tickets as low as possible. The Radford is amazing and doesn't charge us for our performance space or rehearsal space. So, we just cover our overheads. That's all we need. So we can keep our ticket prices really low. And that's been great. And it is our passion, and we want to share that with other people. Yeah. So it's really important to society from both points of view. And I think that's emphasised even more by the fact that no one can go out and do anything. And actually a trip to the theatre would be really lovely. So, but from where we're going with the Wheat Sheaf, we had a committee meeting, I think last week about it, because we've got to have our AGM, which of course is largely nonsense.
Yeah.
Not as a rule, I love a good AGM, but nothing's happened. So we were discussing that, but also what we're going to do is, and this is on my to-do list, we're going to put out a call to arms, and we're going to, in hope for being able to get going again very soon, to do a set of monologues verging on potentially a variety show if people want to do some other bits and bobs. Because, of course, we don't know what's coming. And it may be that we can do something, but with a limited cast, or something, but you can only have one person on stage at a time, or two people, or whatever. And the plan is to do it in such a format that if by the time we're ready to perform, we're still locked down or locked out of the theatres, it could be performed as a Zoom piece.
Yeah. So, thankfully, Wheat Sheaf isn't going anywhere.
Which is not going anywhere. It was our 90th year last year, and we've not been able to obviously celebrate that in the way that we wanted, but we will be doing, as I'm sure many people will, delayed birthday activities as soon as we can. But no, we've been here a long time, and we will keep going.
Okie dokes. And where do you visit on Facebook or the interweb in general?
Yeah, Wheat Sheaf Players on Facebook, Instagram, and I think we've got Twitter as well. Fancy. And you can contact us on there as well. We respond to direct messages. It will probably be me, but it will just say Wheat Sheaf Players. And give us a like, give us a follow. And if you want to join in, we welcome everyone.
Okay, and finally, any words of wisdom or encouragement? Because you are you, And you are wise. And this is the only time I'll say that because I've got to act professional with you.
Not that there's any pressure there. I think it's important to do things that make you feel comfortable and make you feel happy, but it's also interesting to push your boundaries, and amateur dramatic groups can be one of the safest places to do that because it's full of people who've been in the same position and are happy to catch you if you fall.
I really wanted to come out with a witty comment, but you've shattered my hopes. You've been listening to #Performing Arts, a Dumber Archangel Sounds production. Produced and edited by John Ellis Benton. Music by Aaron Crowder. Next time.
I think we did like 43 shows in the end, which like to a lot of people, like, oh, it's 43 shows. You know, I do 8 shows a week for 2 years or whatever, you know. But for me, at 21, first big job in a 600-seat theatre, 43 shows was a lot.
Yeah. And you know, normally twice a day as well. You must have been knackered.
Yeah, I mean, not as much as you guys must have been on stage, you know. But I got to sit down.
Well, yeah.
Dumber.